What is going on, Elite Seekers? What is going on, Destination Devi, and everybody else that is jumping in here? I am Ben at the Ben EB, joined by Brandon at BGC 0614. What's going on, Brandon?
Not much, man. It's been a pretty popping day in the NFL world. We've got a lot of news.
So. Yeah, we weren't even going to go on today, but I think that's been the fun of this show so far this offseason, right? Is unscripted, it's unscheduled, and hey, you might as well just subscribe to the YouTube channel and throw those alerts on because we just don't know when we're going to jump on. Shout out to Zach, first comment. Zachary Coleman in the house. Hey, what's going on, man? Good to see you. Eric is in the house. What's good, Eric? Appreciate you jumping on, man. And, man, it's all about questions today. I think we know that we're going to kind of get led. We got some great questions coming in already. So, Zach, Eric, feel free to throw some questions in the comments there. But, Brandon, why don't you hit us with one of the first questions in our Discord that popped up right away once we announced we're going to do a show today. And let's get right into it. There's a lot going on. Out here. And, hey, here we go.
So why don't we talk about the elephant in the room, which is the news that came down a little while ago that Travis Etienne will be out with a Lisfranc injury. He's going to have surgery. He's been placed already on IR, which means if you're on IR already, you are not eligible to return for the season. So he will be out for the entire 2021 season. First round pick 25, Urban Meyer, wanted Kadarius Toney. Instead went with Trevor Lawrence, his running back out of Clemson. And now he's out for the year. Ben, how do you feel about that?
Man, that's tough news. I don't have a lot of exposure to Travis Etienne. I think Etienne really had a chance to come in and do some special things with this team. I was kind of excited to figure out what the hell his role was going to be, right? We talked a lot about James Robinson. So James Robinson is a dude that it feels a lot like my hometown team, Seattle Seahawks situation with Chris Carson a couple years ago, where you got this guy that comes in out of nowhere, Carson being a 7th round pick, James Robinson being an undrafted guy, and they work their butt off to showcase their skills and their fit to the team and just really come in and do a pretty good job. So I think James Robinson took on a big workload that was very, very unexpected. Nobody could have predicted that. It just wasn't happening. If you happen to pick him up as a streamer, good for you last year. But then we saw as soon as, Etienne gets drafted, everybody kind of falls off on James Robinson goes. There's a few out there that I think stayed consistent, you being one of them, man. And I definitely got to give you hats off to that because you definitely stayed the course with James Robinson. I think if you really listen to what was happening along the way with training camp and just this offseason in general, Urban Meyer never said that James Robinson wasn't going to get touches. We just didn't know what Etienne was going to do. Was he going to eat more into what Laviska was going to do? What were we going to see? So, man, I feel horrible for the rookie coming in with this type of injury. That's brutal, right?
Yeah,
it is brutal. You hate to see that word.
I think I just saw a stat from one. I'll try to find it when we go back and forth, but the number of who said it, but I believe it was like 21% of running backs that get this injury have like a decrease in their production in year 2. So if we're saying that Etienne doesn't even has 0 yards, now granted, he'll go over 0 in theory next year, but if his production ceiling is now capped into year 2, a lot of people spent high draft capital for him. I mean, in one quarterback leagues, he was easily 103, 104. He was in that consideration, right? Or maybe even 102 for some people who just didn't really want to trust the whole Jamar Chase situation being opting out. So now you've burnt your 102 or your 103, and now you're looking at being in that spot again in 2022. And so it's like, and this is why we always and this is why I've said a lot in the Destination Devi Discord, and I feel like I've had to preach it myself, is that running back depth. Yeah. You saw it in the draft we did on Saturday or Sunday night, and there was Ben and I's strategy was just hammer running back all day long, because you can usually find good wide receivers that will pop up. What you can't always find at the back end of drafts is running back depth. You can't find quality running back depth. Because now that you're looking at ETN being down, who's going to run in that backfield? Yeah, J-Rob's going to probably command a lot of the running back attempts, but Carlos Hyde is there, right? That's Urban's guy. Urban coached him as a collegiate guy. Hyde produced in his offense. So we're talking about, when we're talking about Jacksonville, maybe we can stretch this out a little bit here. Yep. When we look at Jacksonville and we look at the offensive structure, right? Guy like Marvin Jones Jr. is probably going to produce well. We've seen Trevor Lawrence go his way quite a bit in preseason.
Yeah, and he knows Bell's offense.
He knows Bell's offense. So I'm looking right here down on the comments. I see, what do we think with Visca stock? I think Visca's going to be used too. I think they're going to probably have some end arounds. I think Visca's probably going to be more like a Bob Woods kind of guy, right? Like he's going to have probably 25, 30 carries somewhere in that. So it's probably 1 to 2 carries a week, right? On top of his crazy low ADOT that he's had so far in the preseason. I think I told you earlier on when we were talking, I think it's at 1. It's crazy. Like he's all of his passes have been right around the line of scrimmage and using his physicality and his athleticism. I think you're going to see a lot of that. I think you're going to see the screen game be like a stretch part of the run game. What I'm paying for J-Rob, I don't know, because I just said that stat about ETN that, there's no guarantee that he's going to be 100. I mean, we hope that he's going to be 100% ready to go 2022, right? Now, does that mean I want to go out and go pay a first-round pick for James Robinson? Maybe if I'm a contender and I know like I'm a chip contender and I just want to have depth, yeah, I might. Like if I have 111 or 112, I'm comfortable paying that. I think I'm comfortable paying that price for J-Rob because I know that at the worst, he's probably going to be a solid flex. Like if I can get him for an early 2, wonderful. If I can buy him for like 201, 202, or 203, fine, not a big deal. But I don't think I really want to go anywhere past 110, 111, just because the same concerns that we had all offseason this year are just going to be back next year.
Yeah, I think you're dead on. I have to agree. As far as James Robinson, what am I willing to pay? If I'm contending, I'm going to go out there and offer up my first-round pick next year. No problem, especially, whether I'm feeling good about the running back position or not. I think James Robinson does have a chance. If he goes out there and performs again this year, now, albeit it is going to be a different-looking offense, but if he comes out and performs, this is a guy that could really just command a big role going forward. And whether that's with Jacksonville, whether that's with another team in the future, you're looking at a guy that is going to be a stable running back going forward. So I really like that. I think he has a chance to crack into that back end RB1, probably more in that RB2 range though. But I think the opportunity is definitely there. We just don't know what that offense overall is going to do. How much is it going to click or not click? That is going to be a big one. And, I think that's going to be really, really interesting. So James Robinson is definitely a guy I'm going to go out there and go after. If he's a guy that I felt pretty good about going into this year, definitely questions, but I liked based on value where he fell. I'm like, yeah, like why not? Right. But I think shout out to you again. You were all over this offseason, even way before ETN. And I think it's a good one. So I just want to give a quick shout out as well. Marty, what's up, Marty? We mentioned the league that we just drafted in the other night where we went running back heavy, including, I believe, ETN. So shout out to Marty, man. Appreciate you jumping on here.
I made a trade. So I made a trade a couple months back, and I posted this in the Heisman tier of Destination Debbie's Patreon. Somebody actually, now that I'm thinking about it, somebody who maybe you want to try a 1-for-1 in is Trey Sermon. I did Trey Sermon straight up for J-Rob. Now, I don't know if the J-Rob owner will take that at this point, but that is the kind of player that I think 1-for-1 might do it. You might have to toss like a 2022 third or a late 2022 second to get them to bite. But that's the kind of player that I think if you're trying to swap 1-for-1, if you're trying to get out, that could be somebody, if you're thinking player style wise. I know if my Iowa Mike was here, he'd probably be throwing up in his mouth because of how much he despises Trey Sermon. But I think that's also kind of like if you're trying to get off of J-Rob, like what are you comfortable taking? I think that's probably like a lateral move where if I can get somebody of similar production plus a later pick, that's okay too, because realistically, the production value is not going to be too much different moving forward long term.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like it. I think that's a good one.
See
Ready to
Marty's,
jump in?
you
Go
see
ahead.
Marty's. Did you see Marty's second post that J-Rob went 4-8 ahead of CEH, Dobbins, Sanders, and Jacobs?
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's a little high for me. I mean, if you're right, if he's back in RB1, right on the RB2 line.
He probably is in that range, though, to be honest. I mean, you have CEH dropping a little bit there because of some injury concerns like the ankle, right? So,
Yeah.
Being that recent of news, I think that's probably fair. You have people down on Dobbins, probably not rightfully so. I get it. He's, probably a little bit too low for me. But Dobbins, being a part of that Ravens offense, everybody's worried about Lamar Jackson, Gus Edwards, both great rushers, right? So, but I think Dobbins will surprise. I do think he'll exceed ADP this year. Sanders, another one, man. Like the Eagles have just been a complete shit show for a while, right? So, I'm sorry if you're an Eagles fan, but it has been a brutal couple years for you ever since the Super Bowl. So I think Miles Sanders is a guy that probably has a little more upside, in my opinion, than James Robinson, but he also has a much lower floor. So James Robinson being that safer guy. Josh Jacobs, I'm just out on. I think with Kenyon Drake there, unless it's like the same situation almost, right? It's Jacobs is kind of where J-Rob was for me.
Yeah, like I feel like if I had injury, like if I had to slide J-Rob in right now, I'd probably put him in between JK and Miles. I think that's probably where I'd want him.
Sure.
Like if I said, hey, rank these 5,
yeah,
that's where I'm putting them. I'm putting them underneath JK because I think JK does a little bit better, a little bit more. I think he gets a little bit more positive touchdown regression, but I'm not going to put him. I'm not going to put him behind Miles Sanders just because we know Kenny Gainwell is lurking.
Yeah, Marty just came on here to troll us too, right? We have a whole bunch of week 7 bye weeks, and that's okay though. Marty's feeling pretty good. I'm gonna find a way to knock you off in week 7 there.
If the
waiver wire.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get you on the show, Marty. You got to make that happen if I knock you off in week 7. So we'll see.
And here's one last piece to that J-Rob. I'm not gonna take any victory laps on J-Rob. I'm just not. It's not worth it. I hope he does.
It's not about the injury.
I don't think this is a victory lap thing. I think for anybody who got, I mean, that's unfortunate. But I think ETN eventually will be better value than Kellen Mond. So I think you're okay there with that deal. I'm not saying like you're taking your victory laps on J-Rob, but if you were looking at him in probably rounds 10, 11, 12 of many of your startup drafts where he was kind of starting to slide towards, you got him at value. You got a value pick. So you can't, like, you're excited because your value is going to hit. Now it's up to you whether or not you feel like you want to, run with him, or if you want to cut loose and try to get more value. It's completely up to you, but the asset will pay off in 2021.
Yep. Just want to touch on this. I know you quickly mentioned Laviska real quick, but I think this definitely helps Laviska a lot. I think my biggest concern was ETN because we didn't know what role. I did feel pretty confident that James Robinson was going to get a good share of carries there, regardless of ETN being there. So I was more looking at ETN as a threat to those short passes that we see Laviska get so often, right? Because Laviska, when he catches the ball and the way he's built, he looks like a running back after the catch. He is just a beast, right? And I do think this absolutely helps Laviska. I think the offense looks garbage right now, but you know what? It is preseason, so I'm not going to overreact. There's definitely pieces you want to pay attention to, and I think they're going to have to figure this out. But my guess is we're looking at Laviska automatically go up maybe 1 to 2 targets a game from wherever they were planning. So that's my thoughts. I like Laviska probably a lot more than most pre-ETN injury as well.
I think I'm more comfortable taking Laviska in drafts now than I was probably 24 hours ago.
Yeah.
Right? Like I think that's what I'm most, at this point, I feel like I'm more comfortable taking, if I had to be in that round 7, 8, and I have the choice between Laviska and say DJ Chark, who's his teammate. I think I'm more comfortable taking Viska now than I was Chark.
Yeah. I think the biggest surprise for me in this whole offense is, which probably shouldn't have been a surprise, is that I really think like Marvin Jones might end up being the guy that gets the majority of targets. And I don't think I saw that coming. Like, it makes sense when you talk about him following Bevel over, and and he's very consistent and things like that. But we know he's been underrated for a long, long time with Detroit. So good for Marvin Jones. It does look solid for him, especially with, his Shark kind of being injured right now. We saw him on the sideline there, and he should be back anytime now. But it just allows Marvin to get more comfortable and build more of a rapport with Trevor Lawrence, because I know they haven't said who's going to be week 1 starter, but it's not going to be Minshew. Like let's not talk about that.
I mean, not that Trevor Lawrence looked great last night, and we can maybe transition into last night. I mean, sure. Trevor started off really just that offensive line can't pass block.
Yeah.
They just could not pass block last night. And he was running for his life at times. I don't want to even blame some of those throws just because he didn't have a chance to step up. I'm concerned. I'm not concerned long-term about Trevor Lawrence and his value. I don't think I ever was. I don't think any of us should be. But I would be concerned if you're in a redraft and you've already taken Trevor Lawrence, expecting him to be the QB savior of Jacksonville, because they're just going to be behind a lot. And you saw last night, they just didn't look comfortable. I don't know if it's just the new offensive scheme and just how they're trying to work their way through it. Obviously, no Chark, now no ETN. What does that, they really don't have a tight end presence. I mean, Manhurts and O'Shaughnessy is just not going to cut it. Yeah. Right. So if you only have Marv, Visca, and J-Rob, I saw some flashes of Colin Johnson later on, but you're going to think, unfortunately, this offense might just sputter a lot. It kind of almost feels kind of like the Giants did last year. Yeah. But obviously with a better quarterback, but like just in the way it looked, it was functioning, like struggling through a new offense, had some pieces, but not a lot of pieces. It just looks like right now, it just doesn't look what it's going to look like. So the first few weeks might be pretty brutal to watch.
Yeah. Luke Farrell is a guy that I'm going to keep my eye on. He is a guy coming out of Ohio State, just an incredible blocker, which is going to help get him on the field at the tight end position. And we saw him make, a decent catch there. And is he somebody as a rookie that could come in and earn a role? That's somebody to keep an eye on as a stash, especially if you're in tight end premium leagues. But Luke Farrell is guaranteed he's going to be on your waiver wire. So I would say just get ahead of that a little bit, see what's going on there. And he's decent, man. He's really decent. He had a great career with Ohio State. So under the radar guy, because we're always talking about the most athletic ones, but he has a chance to carve out a role pretty early on.
And with nobody taking over the tight end spot right now, it's the perfect opportunity for him to jump in and, hey, if he gets 30 catches, hey, guess what? It's a great taxi stash. That's a name to throw way down there in those big leagues where you're just stashing people, hoping for one to pop. Like that's one that you can
throw them on your watch list.
Throw them on the watch list because maybe Marty's question down there at the bottom there.
Yeah. I just want to quickly we're going down the line here, but I agree. Going back to the Josh Jacobs piece, I can't really get behind him unless I think I've only taken him in one league this year that had a startup, and that was because he fell. I believe I got him at the very end of the 6th round, which I was a little more okay with. But there's no way. I mean, you're looking at guys that I like probably at least equal to him later on with Miles Sanders. Is definitely going somewhere around there. I would much rather that upside, even though it's crazy with the Eagles. But James Robinson, even pre-injury, I would rather have him a few rounds later. Ronald Jones, even farther down the list, I would rather have Ronald Jones because I really think like if you don't mind taking a guy that's not going to get any of that passing work, then go get like Ronald Jones is going to be that type of guy where he can have some big games, and I feel really good about that one. Later on, if you're willing to take Jacobs, because there's just so many better players that you can get. I'd probably pivot to even a different position once I get to that point of the draft.
Yeah, I feel like where Jacobs is going is when I start to think about wide receivers, or even
you're starting to get into like T. Higgins, Brandon Ayuk, Chase Claypool, like that, even later. Right. So
or even like my QB
Amari Cooper
sometimes. So I might be looking at like Zach Wilson or
Sure.
You know, like probably by then it's probably like Carson Wentz too. It's probably all like the junk dart tosses, but you want to secure that third.
Baker, probably Baker's in that realm.
Baker
I
might
would
actually
assume it's
still
got
be
to be
Baker's.
pretty close.
So I mean, when you start to think about where he is right now in ADP, it's like, well, do I want to shore up and make sure my third quarterback is firm, or do I want to go with probably my running back 3 that I'm not really sure I'm going to want to start every week in my RB2 spot? I probably could play. I'd rather play like a Nyheim Hines or a Ramondre Stevenson, who is on my list on another question we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not saying I'm all the way out on Jacobs. I think he still has production value. He still every player has fantasy value. It's just, what is that fantasy value to you? That's what you always have to ask yourself, is what is Jacobs worth it to you?
Tyler asks, Ja'Marr Chase stuff. B, what stuff are we talking about here?
So an Instagram story. So back it up a little bit that on the information that I've been able to look at this afternoon. So Ja'Marr Chase was in a relationship and got a woman pregnant, to which he claims the pregnancy is not his. And then there was an Instagram story that will post that went up a little after the ETN news, or right around the same time as the ETN news. Sorry, Eric. Yes, that was like a whole story way back. But apparently there was some domestic violence involved in the situation, that he beat her. There was some expletives used that we will keep off the YouTube airs and, for whatnot. My take on it all is I need more information. I need more clarity to it. I've said this in multiple spaces. If there's video that comes to this that proves, that can corroborate this situation, I don't see how Ja'Marr Chase sees the field. I'll say that right now. The NFL has been very strict on domestic violence, and there's been kind of almost a precedent in these kind of cases where, when there's actual video to the situation, it's really hard for the player to actually see the field. Yeah. If there is just he said, she said, and it does still turn out to be true, I could see a suspension, maybe of a few games, because again, we've seen that precedent. Tyreek Hill, we've seen that with others in that situation. If there's not much more to it than a off the cuff situation that needs to be dealt with litigation, then I don't know what the situation. But ultimately, this could explain maybe why Ja'Marr Chase's focus has been off the last couple of days. I'm not going to get into his mind and try to figure out what's going on in there. There's a lot going on. This is a lot of stuff in a few days. That's where I am with it. I don't know if there's really much more to it all. I don't know but there's not much information that's really.
Yep. And I think that's where it's at, right? Like, we know how serious domestic violence is. And so anytime these accusations come out, you got to listen. You got to listen to what's going on. And we're not the professionals here, so we're not involved with this. So we're just out there listening, gathering the information, and what the NFL says, what the police reports say. I mean, you got to go with that, right? But this is a very serious thing, and you hope that there's, not truth to it, but you just don't know. You got to listen. You got to just see what happens and see what comes out. This is very early. This is a breaking thing. But I think, if you are speculating a bit, I think that's a good call, Brandon, as far as maybe this is part of the reason you're seeing some focus issues with Ja'Marr Chase. Obviously, a lot going on, just being drafted that high as is, with those expectations coming in. But then you throw a lot of other outside influences in as well. Something as serious as this, and it could really rock someone. And we're talking about young men, right, in this situation.
I mean, that are 20, going on 21.
Yeah, this is.
We all know what we were doing.
Essentially. So, yeah. So I think that's pretty much all we got on this one. Just continue to monitor.
From a fantasy perspective, if you're trying to get rid of them, now is not the time to move them, because you're just not. Yeah. I mean, you're going to get probably lowballed with like Hollywood and a 3rd round pick for him. Yeah, people are going to do that kind of stuff. If you want to go purchase Chase and throw away maybe a low ball offer out at him just to see if there is something, go for it.
Yep. I'm going to jump right into the Saints, because, I mean, that's the talk of the town right now, right, outside of ETN. So, man, this was real interesting. So Peyton said, if you're asking me today, my number 2 running back is Tony Jones. He used Jones a lot with the ones to kind of evaluate. We got guys like Latavius Murray who have been very, very consistent. I'm talking the last 2 years. I was looking over it with Jay Rich, and we're talking about a guy that averaged, I believe it was 4.5 yards per carry, roughly 160-ish carries there both years, 2 years in a row in identical numbers. You also have Devonta Freeman there. So Tony Jones, man, is this one of our preseason darlings, or is this something that we got to pay attention to?
I think it's definitely somebody that if you can get him for really low cost fob in your waiver wire, go for it. Don't go spending draft capital trying to pick up Tony Jones. That's just remember Alvin Kamara is still there. He's still on the throne in that backfield. Yeah. So he's going to see the predominant amount of touches. He's still going to see, he's going to control that backfield. I don't think, but Tony Jones, like you said, if he takes over the Latavius Murray role, which is about 150, 160 touches for 4.5 yards, and he falls into the end zone a few times, hey, he's a great best ball target because you just don't know when he's going to fall into the end zone, right? Like he could have a couple games where he has like 4 for 10 and a touchdown. And all of a sudden that's 7.5 points, right? Depending on what kind of, if you're in a PPC league and points per carry league. So I'm not saying like you go out and get him because you're going to start him. You're going out and getting him because if Kamara goes down, Tony Jones is definitely somebody who Sean Payton trusts. And when you're somebody Sean Payton can trust, you become really valuable in that offense.
Yeah. Yeah. And Sean Payton will play whoever. He does not care about where you came from, your draft capital, any of that stuff. So if you fit the system, you got a chance to play for Sean Payton. It's all about performance there. So you love to see it. Marquez Callaway, man, what a game. What a coming out party for him. 2 touchdowns. If you didn't get a chance to see it, please type in his name and go check out some videos on YouTube, Twitter, whatever. But they were tough, really tough catches, Jameis Winston just dropping the ball right there where only Marquez could go get it. This is a guy that I'm spending almost everything I got to go get him. This is kind of that early season big piece for a team. This is a guy that I think is going to easily be the wide receiver 1 for the Saints with Winston. That kind of upside is going to be crazy. We know that Winston has not officially, unless it happened while we're on the show here, has not officially been named as a week 1 starter, but we know it's not Taysom. It's not Taysom. It's not happening. There's just that offense is not moving. Jameis looked incredible yesterday and really kind of put the nail in the coffin to that competition, in my opinion. But what's your thoughts on Marquez, man? Marquez Callaway.
I picked him up in a couple leagues a couple weeks ago, just with the whole news of Michael Thomas going down for quite some time with the ankle surgery. I believe, if I remember correctly, Callaway had a really good game, one really good game last year. I can't remember if it was a Monday Night Football game or what, but he had a really, really good game. Like it was a ton of targets, good targets. I'm probably going out and probably trying to actively find him if I can for like a second round pick, if I can. He'll be the number 1 for the first few weeks. And he clearly has displayed a touch with Jameis. I'm sure probably with Jameis rocking with the 2s last year in practice, the 2 of them really developed a chemistry, and you can tell that. You can see that in the throws that happened last night. I mean, both touchdowns. I mean, those were probably 2 of Jameis. Those were like 2 retro Tampa Bay Jameis touchdown throws, right? Where he just kind of hung around in the pocket, waited, and then just launched it deep, which you're going to see a lot with the Saints offense this year. I think that's the one piece to the Saints offense that hasn't been there the last few years with Drew Brees is the ability to push the ball downfield consistently, not just take one shot and then wait 30 more passes. Like you're going to see far more balls downfield. And I don't know that they have the personnel outside of Callaway to really do that. I mean, yes, Michael Thomas will be back, and Marty's got a question down there, and he paused on Callaway when Thomas comes back. No, I don't. because I think they can run a different route tree. And I think that Thomas will be more of your intermediate guy. Like, I need 5 yard, 3rd and 6, and I need 7. And I think that's Michael Thomas's role. Whereas with Marquez Callaway, like, I want to take the lid off the secondary. Callaway possesses the speed and the size to go up and go do that. Yeah. That's where, like, they balance off of one another. So Callaway might not see necessarily the quantity of targets, but he's going to see a better quality target because he doesn't have to worry about having the number 1 with Michael Thomas there. And we've seen that to be the case sometimes, right? When the alpha wide receiver takes the number 1 corner on, the guy that's normally alongside doesn't necessarily get as many targets and as much production, but he does get the better quality targets. So I don't think once Thomas comes back, Callaway just fades into oblivion.
Yeah, I think Michael Thomas is going to be the wide receiver 1 when he comes back, if he's healthy. But keep in mind, there's been a lot of other things going on with Michael Thomas. So if he comes back healthy, how's he going to be head-wise? Like, we have heard a whole lot of bickering and kind of banter back and forth between the Saints and Michael Thomas for the last year and a half or so. So that's something to keep in mind, and when you throw in an injury that's going to keep a guy off the field for a while, then you throw in some young talent that has a chance to ascend. It can get really messy for a guy's confidence. Now, we don't know what's going on fully with Michael Thomas, how he's feeling about the team aside from the injury piece. So I'm not going to speculate too much there, but I think it is a piece of the pie. I think it's good information to pay attention to. That, yes, I would expect Michael Thomas to come back, and he's the guy. He's going to be that wide receiver 1. We're talking about a guy that was just recently the wide receiver 1 of the entire league, right? So with all those targets coming in from Drew Brees, feels like years ago, but it really wasn't. So now you throw in Marquez Callaway. I think the guy that you got to be most concerned that, if you're a Deontay Harris truther, well, that ship has sailed. He's going to be a guy that helps out on special teams. We know he really kind of shot himself in the foot. He has the suspension coming as well with the DUI this offseason. So Deontay Harris off the books. Tre'Quan Smith is another guy we talked about when Michael Thomas went down. And I think Tre'Quan's ship has sailed as well. He's going to get in. He's going to get, targets here and there. And I don't think he's going to have any upside. And that's what you were kind of hoping for, in my opinion, with Tre'Quan. So if you have Tre'Quan on a roster, hey, I'm taking a 3rd and getting out of there. If I can get a future 3rd round pick, I'm good with that in Dynasty. I'm out of there. Because I do think he'll probably be a drop candidate at some point, unless you're just like holding a pretty low upside guy, almost as a wide receiver handcuff. Because I think Marquez is running away with this. I even like Lil Jordan Humphrey better than Tre'Quan at this point. I think he brings a little bit of a different dynamic as well. He's not little. Like, he's not little at all. He's a big receiver.
Oh, he looked like a tank running down the field.
Yeah, he flashed last year. He had some moments, and then he looked really good again. So Lil Jordan Humphrey is another guy that I think is sneaky. That if you didn't get Marquez Callaway, say you're playing a dynasty league, he's a guy I would really keep an eye on. I'm not picking him up in redraft at this point, but again, put him on your watch list, see what happens. Pay attention to the Michael Thomas news. Does he come back sooner than later? How's he feeling with the team? Does the team try to move on from him? I doubt it, but that's how I feel in that situation. And then I want to touch on the last part of Marty's question here. We know Adam Troutman went down, brutal injury, and this is a guy that was not everybody, but a ton of people out there were like, it's Adam's time now. Jared Cook has moved on, but we kind of saw before the injury, Juwan Johnson, moving over from that wide receiver position, put on a little bit of weight. The other, what was it? Not this last night, but last week, I believe it was 2 catches, 71 yards. And everybody said, whoa, like they're actually trying to do something with Juwan Johnson right now. So that's a very interesting pickup. If you're in a tight end premium league, those kind of things, I think you got to be ahead of the game with Juwan Johnson. But he definitely has a great chance. He's going up against Nick Van Nett, who played for my Seahawks early on. We drafted him. And Nick Van Nett, I believe he was a 4th round pick off the top of my head. But he was just a guy that like blocked pretty solid. He could catch okay, but he didn't really latch on. Like the Seahawks had a lot of like pretty average tight ends, and Nick Van Nett could don't think Nick Van Ette's the guy that helps your offense get going. If you're looking for a receiver in the middle of the field from that tight end position, I feel like Juwan Johnson has to be the guy. It just gives you that mismatch ability coming from the wide receiver position.
He's a big dude too. Juwan 6'4", 231, played at Oregon. This is his second season. He didn't really see much of anything last year. He had 10 targets, 4 catches for 39 yards. So pretty much didn't do much. He was easily the third tight end behind Jared Cook and Adam Troutman. Like you said, Troutman's down. We don't know for how long, how serious that injury. So I would imagine that Juwan Johnson will probably get some more run this week in the third final preseason game. Obviously, Vanette's there. Is he more of an inline blocker or is he more of the actual threat? I mean, Saints love themselves a tight end. So anytime the Saints love themselves a tight end, you gotta you could take a flyer. Again, what you judge your bottom of your bench, your 28 through, if you're playing a 30-man bench, who are your 28 through 30s, who's going to actually see the field? Are the people at the bottom of your bench going to see the field, or would you rather take a shot on a tight end that could potentially, actually produce for you?
Yep. Love it. Top Dog, got another question coming in. What's the difference between the Jameis we saw last night and the Jameis that was in Tampa Bay? That's pretty easy. I mean, he had some time to sit behind Drew Brees. I think that alone is just massively, massively underrated. Yes, there was talk about Taysom the whole time, but Jameis was out there. He was just learning, reinventing himself. Then we also got some eye surgery to help a little bit there. So how much does that play in? I don't know. But I do know the last time I saw a guy that I heard was way underrated and having a lot of issues with drops. This is a wide receiver position, so a different position. Ended up going to get some eye surgery, some corrective eye surgery. That was Jermaine Kearse a few years back. He was a guy that had crazy athletic ability at the University of Washington, ended up latching on with the Seahawks as kind of a no-name, like local guy that made the team, gets his eye surgery, and next thing you know, these drops disappear. So we know that there's a chance that this could help, but I think a lot of it comes down to decision making. So if you're seeing the field better and you're learning different ways coming into a new system where you're playing with Drew Brees, we know what Sean Payton's been able to do, another guru in the field. So I just think he's surrounded by a lot better people that are helping him, and the combination of all those things. Also, the fact that this guy's, you watch him and you laugh a lot when he does interviews and such, but Jameis is a competitor, right? And when you are a guy that goes from being like the top dog in college and number one pick guy with that level of talent to the point where people are laughing you off the field because of interceptions and just craziness all around, now you got a moment in life. Are you gonna just get booed off and be done for your career and become a backup and then kind of just slowly fade on from there? Or are you going to fight back and try to take advantage of an opportunity when a Hall of Famer like Drew Brees, he's leaving? Are you going to soak that up? Are you going to take on the challenge and go win that job? And that's what I think is happening. I think Jameis is rising to that challenge, and he's got a lot more information that he's been able to take in over this last year and a half. So that's the major difference from a maturity standpoint, from a information standpoint that I'm seeing with Jameis, as well as the eye surgery. I think all of those things combined, we got a chance to see a really big year. And Jameis, I was just reading the other day, so in the live practices, he was 9 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. We stretch that out a little bit. We're looking at somewhere in that 36 touchdowns, 16 interceptions. If something like that happens for a guy like Jameis Winston, the world is going to go crazy, right? The arm talent's there. The talent is there. So I'm all in on Jameis. I think just seeing him with what he was able to do with Callaway just shows the work he was putting in. So I'm pretty excited, but I think there'll still be bumps in the road. It's not going to be, the end all be all. And it's, there's going to be bumps in the road 100%. I think he's more equipped to handle those now.
He's always been a double-digit interception guy. I went checking out his stats. He had 15, 18, 11, 14 before he had the good old 30-30 season, right? So he's always had the talent and he's always had the skill and he's always been a good leader, right? It was, I think, a combination of I think Marty says it best. He just seemed to have better poise.
Decisions. Yeah.
Like, and that's the thing is like when you are known, and Jameis was known as just kind of like a YOLO kind of passer. Like just through caution. I mean, it helps when you have Mike Evans, right? You got a man that can go up and go get it. But if he's a 50-50 guy and 50% of the time he gets it and the other 50% of the time it's picked off because it's an underthrown ball, when you just need to get rid of it, especially when you're in field goal range or you're in touchdown, you're within scoring range, that's going to be where I feel like Jameis is really going to improve. Yes, there's Taysom there, and Taysom just didn't look good last night. For whatever reason, he just didn't look good. Obviously, they have one more game this weekend.
For the reason he's not a quarterback.
For the reason he's not a quarterback full time. And I think that's the case. I think Jameis is going to be the quarterback, but there will be times where Taysom comes back on the field in short yardage situations where they can utilize what Taysom's good at, which is short passes, run pass option. Now, Jameis is a runner. He did have in his 30-30 season, he did have almost 60 rushing attempts, which I think is crazy when we think about Jameis. We don't think of him as a running quarterback, but he had 60 attempts. So I think that ultimately Taysom's still going to see the field. I don't think even if Jameis wins the battle and gets the starting nod for week 1, it's that, Taysom's just going to go into oblivion. We're never going to see him. No, he's going to still see the field. It just won't be in a full-time role. And I think that's the way the Saints want it to be. I think that's how they want it to be. But they wanted to see, did Jameis learn? I keep putting them together, Jason. Did they because that's ultimately what they're going to be called the entire season, right? Jason. What does Jameis's performance this season will dictate what his long-term status is with the club.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. Jameis realizes this might be his last real chance at long-term securing himself as a starting quarterback in the NFL. That if he fails this time, he's going down the Teddy Bridgewater backup role. That's going to be where Jameis is, because he's not going to not have a job because he's a top first-round pick.
Yeah.
But he won't have the starting gig because the bugaboo will always be Jameis's decision-making.
Yes, it's now or never for Jameis, and I really believe he's set up for success. Having a guy like Kamara in the backfield with you as well for those checkdowns is going to be massive. Now I'm curious, are we going to see a lot more Taysom in the tight end role? Is that a possibility? I think it is, but I also think it goes a lot to, what's Taysom's pride on that? How is he feeling? Because he has said, soon or as late as last year, he's talked about, if I'm not the quarterback, if I'm not seen as a true quarterback here with the Saints, I'm happy with moving on. We haven't heard that recently.
Move on, because I don't know where you're going to start, man.
That's it. It's not happening, and I think he needs to come to that realization, and he may have already, right? You kind of saw his body language with how the game was going yesterday, and that really stood out to me. Jameis is out there dancing around, smiling, running out, high-fiving everybody coming off.
That's leadership.
Taysom was the opposite. He just looked like, man, I gave it everything I had, and it just wasn't happening, So my hope is maybe that's the type of role we see him kind of transition to, because that could be interesting.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, Top Dog. It's leadership. And that's, I think what's going to ultimately get Jameis the job is the fact that he wants to see this team succeed. He wants this, to work. And they made a contract that was decent. I think he's making 12 to 15 million this year. So he's being compensated correctly, at least in my opinion, for a 1-year deal. And if he does well, they can get rid of Taysom. They've put voidable years on his contract. They can void his contract out, give Jameis a big contract. Ian Book and Trevor Siemian are more than comfortable enough in that system, more than likely with a year in that system, to become good backups to Jameis. Obviously, there'll be a little bit of a different skill set because Ian Book is more of a mobile rusher kind of quarterback. He won a lot of games in Notre Dame, and that's about all he did, is just win games. So that helps. He's a winner, but he's not exactly the same kind of build as Jameis. But yeah, I think Jameis has the ability to unlock this offense that Drew Brees couldn't in the last 4 or 5 years, and that's important. The ability to have the big play. Now, I don't know what once cuts come, which are coming soon, if there's going to be opportunities, or maybe there's going to be a trade chance where maybe somebody like a James Washington pops up. That would be a fun name to see down in New Orleans to go alongside Marquez Callaway. Could somebody like a Jamison Crowder possibly get moved, right? Or Denzel Mims. That would be a fun one in the slot to offset Callaway and then eventually Michael Thomas. Like there's some options that are going to potentially come out that this Saints offense, yeah, there's no Michael Thomas and yeah, there's no Drew Brees, but replacing it with Jameis and potentially some other pieces. I think their over under is 9.5. I think that's the number that I've seen. And that's a tough number for me to kind of like look at. Like if I said, hey, if you told me, hey, over under, I would probably lean under. I'd probably say like 9 and 8 is probably where they land just because there's going to be some struggle busing going on, but I think they'll eventually figure themselves out. But if they were to bolster up that wide receiver core, they could be dangerous, especially with Jameis throwing the football and Sean Payton at the helm. I like Sean Payton as a coach, and I think he can bring Jameis with Jameis's leadership. I think they can rise up.
Yeah. I'm excited to see it. I think it's going to play out, and we're going to see some great stuff from Jameis. Yes, take him to the next level. Absolutely. Kyle, we did touch base on ETN early in the show, but just real quickly, if I'm in a dynasty league, what would I be willing to pay for ETN with the news? I'm not paying a first, that's for sure. I'm definitely in that second round pick area. I would be okay with that, but I'm not giving up a first because I think there'll be, I know people are down on the 2022 rookie class right now, but that will hype up as you get closer to it. I promise. It doesn't matter. There will be at least 12 guys that everybody is excited about. So stay tuned for that. But I think a second round pick I'd be okay with. Outside of that, it'd have to be probably an aging veteran if I'm a rebuilding team and trying to help out a contender that has ETN and is trying to unload.
Yeah.
What about you, Brandon?
Yeah, I'm not giving up anything more than like 202, probably. Like if I had to think about like top 14 players in next year's draft, yeah, that's probably about where, because again, Edwin Porras, FB Injury Doc, put out a great tweet earlier about, year 2 production. And so I just don't know, like, would I rather have somebody like would I rather have Kyron Williams in a juicy location, or would I rather have Travis Etienne still with J-Rob? That's where I start to make that.
Or Kevin Harris, we got the back surgery this year, but it doesn't get healthy by the end.
Like, do I want Kevin Harris? Do I want even a quarterback like Malik Willis potentially, or a Carson Strong? Do I want one of those guys over Travis Etienne?
Yeah.
That's where I feel like the line is. Like after that, once you start to get into like straight over your shoulder dart throws.
Yeah.
But I don't know that somebody's going to pay that right now.
Yeah.
Because they're mourning the loss of ETN, which for them was probably their RB2.
Yep. 100%. I'm with you there. The last little piece I wanted to get into, I think we had one question in the Discord as well. Who are some of your most overhyped and underhyped guys so far this preseason, based on the preseason?
Just on the preseason. Overhyped guys? I'm going to say it, and I know a lot of people are probably going to be, I'm going to get some hate, especially where I'm living right now. Ramondre Stevenson. I think there's a lot of hype on him right now. He's got, I think, 4 touchdowns in 2 games. He's looked really, really good. He's looked healthy. He's probably looked like the best back out of that backfield right now, but it's Bill Belichick, friends. And if you want to play the Bellatrix every week, be my guest. He's looked good. He's getting pushed really hard right now, but I don't see consistent week in, week out production from Ramondre Stevenson. I don't see it. I just don't see it. Another overhyped guy. I'm trying to think. You got one?
Overhyped for me, and we mentioned him earlier, and it's not a crazy overhype, but Baker Mayfield for me. I think Baker Mayfield is a guy that is going to give you consistency, but what we're starting to see is him creep up into that area where you could go get a Tua, who I believe can give you a lot more upside. So Zach Wilson is another one that I think he's going to be in a similar range of drafting, who gives you a lot more upside. So Baker for me is very consistent, but if I'm happy with a quarterback that's going to give me that kind of consistency, I'm just going to wait and take someone like Derek Carr a little bit later. I got
another one, and it's actually from the same team on your first guy, Donovan Peoples-Jones. I love me some DPJ.
I hate you.
I love me some DPJ. I love him. He's an athletic freak. Yeah. But man, he's on the wrong offense right now. He's on the wrong offense. Like, they are a run-first offense, so they're going to run that ball through Nick Chubb in that offensive line, which has looked real good. Kareem Hunt is still there. You still have Odell Beckham. You still have Jarvis Landry. You still have Austin Hooper, David Njoku, and Bryant there. I just don't know how he gets meaningful touches this year. I know he's looked good. I know they've thrown the ball to him a lot. He looks really good, and I know that I'll probably take some heat for that. I'm perfectly fine with it, but I just think in regular season, I just don't see how DPJ gets consistently 6+ targets every week.
Yep. I'm going to throw another rookie out there for underhyped. And this one makes sense because of what transpired this offseason, but that's Dwayne Eskridge from the Seahawks. So Dwayne Eskridge, going by D Eskridge now, is somebody that is NFL ready, right? He's been battling a toe injury, started the offseason on the PUP, but he recently got taken off the PUP. They did some equipment changes to protect his toe. He's now reportedly at 100%. So now you go, okay, how does a rookie catch up to try and earn that number 3 role in this brand new Seahawks offense, who nobody really knows how it's going to look? We're hearing there's going to be a little bit of an uptick, not a major one, in the passing game. But if it's anything like the Rams game, we know they're okay with spreading those targets around. So having someone like DK, having someone like Tyler Lockett, who definitely can go deep, even throwing a Gerald Everett in there up the seams now as a new addition, D Eskridge could absolutely tear it up and have some big games and grow into a role as the season goes on. Over this last week, Russell Wilson has had him meeting at the facility at 5:45, so they could get an hour a day of one-on-one work in to get him caught up. So if that doesn't tell you that there is some major plans for D Eskridge, I don't know what is. You got to remember this is a second-round pick. Yes, an older rookie, absolutely, but I think that's why he's going to be a lot more game ready. So D Eskridge is one that could blow up and have a way bigger role than we expected this year. Now he's behind Tyler Lockett. He's behind DK Metcalf. How many targets are there to go around after that? I don't know. But I think he's way too underhyped. You're seeing him go probably in the same realm as, Amari Rodgers and guys like that, like way, 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 way late in the draft. I don't have the ADP in front of me, but definitely a guy that I'm paying attention to. Had some buzz and then just fell off with the toe injury.
Guy I'm looking at, Byron Pringle. I know our guy Jay Rich, he was hyping him up all last week and in our group chat, and I agree with him. You saw him ball out last week. The offense in Kansas City runs through Kelsey and Hill. That's just who it does. We know that to be the case, but somebody else is going to have to step up and be that wide receiver too. So whether it's Mecole Hardman, which I don't think it's going to be, they tried to force feed the ton out of him the other day, and I think we know what he is. And so it comes down to Demarcus Robinson and Byron Pringle, and every time Byron Pringle has been in the lineup, his frame is huge. And he's just always seems to produce. And so he's a guy that I don't mind. He's 6'1", 205. He had 4 catches for 63 yards the other night. I love him as a late of the bench kind of toss. I know I got a lot of those that I've been talking about. He's a guy that I'm really kind of looking to be able to kind of produce and be on my squads. He's on my short roster squads just because I really, really like him. Another guy that I'm kind of underhyped that I think he's just kind of slowly chilled under the radar, but now he's starting to pop is I think Jaret Patterson. Jaret Patterson has completely been the Washington football team's main rusher pretty much the entire preseason. If you watch the game, he's clearly got a role on that offense. I don't know what it is, right? I just don't know what it's going to look like, but it's very clear and very obvious Ron Rivera wants to find him the ball in different ways. Jaret Patterson was not a pass catcher last year at Buffalo. He had absolutely nothing. He had 0 catches. He had a ton of yards on the ground, but no catches. But he's been utilized in both the run game and the pass game in Washington. So he's a guy that I'm throwing on my taxi because he's going to be free. And if heaven forbid Antonio Gibson's toe acts up or he gets injured, I think you're going to see a combination of J.D. McKissic and Jaret Patterson. I don't think it's just going to be the McKissic show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, I'll just quickly run through three running backs. You already mentioned one, J.D. McKissic, super undervalued. I think you're already seeing him take on that third down role again. So whether you love Antonio Gibson or not, I think McKissic is here to stay in that type of role. He did a really good job. So you're going to see McKissic probably catch more passes than you'd like to if you're an Antonio Gibson truther. And also staying with that same type of back, I think James White. I also think Gio Bernard continue to be guys that you can probably play in your flex where you need to and are going to get a healthy, line of targets coming at them. So on that same type of guy, Tony Pollard, I think is a guy that's overhyped a little bit. I think Zeke is going to be Zeke this year. He looks the part. He looks prepared. And I don't really like taking guys that I feel like I have to wait for an injury. That's not my style. So, and that's what I feel like it's going to be with Tony Pollard. I don't think he's going to command those same type of targets because Zeke does a great job with those targets as well. So it's going to be interesting, but that's really all we got. I think no more questions coming in. So that is going to wrap us up here. Brandon, anything before we get out of here? I think we'll probably pop on maybe another time this week or who knows, anytime. Just make sure y'all subscribe and turn on the alerts.
Yeah, like, subscribe. I mean, we're just going to try and keep these things going. I mean, obviously with the ETN news, we kind of felt like we had to come on today, at least to chat for a little bit, kind of ease some fears, ease some, some uneasiness, kind of talk this thing out. We always try to do it from a fantasy perspective. We're going to try and give this the lens of the fantasy perspective. What information do we have? How can we help you guys out? If the information that we have is only for ourselves, then we're not doing you guys a service here. We wanted to help you guys out as much as you can. Obviously, feel free to DM Ben or I, whether it's on Twitter, Discord. We'll try to, answer your questions as much as we can on these streams. That's kind of what they're here for, is to try and answer your questions.
That's it. It's a blast, man. As always, I am off to cook some lasagna. So let's get it. I'm up for the challenge today, a new type of lasagna. So I'm out of here, going to hang out with the family, but appreciate everybody that checked in with us in the comments. Thank you guys so much. We will be back again sometime soon. So again, like, subscribe, help us out there. Turn on the alerts if you do like getting these shows because, hey, it's unscheduled, it's unscripted, and we'll continue to bring some heat for you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Elite Seekers out.